It's baffled scholars for 2 millennia. It is a puzzle made of multi-dimensional elements, an enigma with roots that reach back to the dawning of time, perhaps before. Daniel explained part of it. Ezekiel and Isaiah had glimpses into it. John saw it all for the time of the end. That time is now. Join Derek and Sharon Gilbert on a journey that spans the course of history, from Eden to Mount Hermon, from Hermon to Babel, from Babel to Rome, from Rome to the cross, and from there to us. Biblical prophecy is coming true before your eyes, and to understand it, you must discern the times both then and now. It's time to unravel the threads of this all-encompassing prophetic paradox. It's time to unravel Revelation.
The fifth and sixth seals. Welcome to Unraveling Revelation from Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and we are once again in the G2 studio here at the bunker. We are doing our very best to stay home to stop the spread. Derek's now doing his 5 and 10 from the studio, but we're trying to keep the number of people over there as low as possible, just on the safe side.
The folks at the warehouse are working very hard. They've got a crew back there working again, and just in general to be cautious and considerate of them, and also of my mother, who's 83 years old, and wanting to make sure that I don't spread anything to her that then might transfer to the folks at the retirement community where she lives. But we're praying that things are on the way out, and we are headed towards a summer where we can once again get back together and enjoy each other's company, and start hugging people again.
I can't wait to hug people again. I'm cleaning off my glasses. I just realized they're all smudgy. Derek said that we're going to be doing the fifth and sixth seal today. We may not make that sixth seal today. That's a little ambitious, and because the sixth seal has to do with setting up the trumpets, we may put that off until next week, and we'll explain why later.
But there's a lot of meat here, and perhaps I was ambitious looking at the fact that the fifth seal only covers 3 verses, but there's a lot of stuff in those 3 verses.
There is a lot of stuff there. We'll see. We might get to the 6th one. Is it the 6th or the 7th? No, it's the 7th seal that is the trumpets. So we might do 5 and 6 today. We don't want to rush this. Seriously, we take these verses very seriously. We want to unpack as much as we can bring to them. But we want to remind you, we are not claiming that we have the definitive answer to all of this.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Combining this study with others who are prophecy scholars is the way to go, because we're all trying to triangulate on the truth, and none of us has a monopoly on that.
So, no, not at all.
Yeah, well, I like the way you put it. At the marriage supper of the Lamb, when the Lord says, okay, all of you who got end times prophecy completely right, raise your hand, and there won't be a single hand raised except for his.
The Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Exactly. He'll say, well, I did, and he'll probably point to the Gilberts and go, wrong.
You guys were way out there.
Way out there, but we do our best, and I know you are doing that as well. And another reason that we do it the way we do, as in Gilbert House Fellowship, is we go through slowly, we give you the best information we can, and we want to show you using the tools that we have on the internet. That you're staying home, you may not be working, you've got the internet. Bring your kids in, your grandkids in, and go through these verses with them. Get them excited about prophecy.
Right.
In fact, this Bible is the one that I had as a kid. This is an old Schofield Bible that is just underlined all over the place, notes in the margins. I was constantly studying. You can see it's sort of starting to look beaten up. But this was what I was given, and it was recommended by the pastor of our church. Back then, Schofield was very much the way to go, dispensationalism. I do believe in certain aspects of dispensationalism. I'm not rigid about it. But yeah, this was my Bible. So as a kid, 9 years old, I was reading this. I was reading this at night. I was diving in so your kids can do it too.
Yeah, and especially if you're going to start with them on that, start with the first few studies of this series, and you'll find all of those at Skywatch TV in the Unraveling Revelation playlist. You'll also find it at, we're going to start making DVD sets available soon, going back to the early ones, because the early studies start off in the book of Genesis and show how you can't really understand Revelation until you understand the whole supernatural war that goes back to Genesis 1 and those other entities that are involved. Because the writers of the apocalypse, as we've discussed, we believe, since John named the rider on the fourth horse Thanatos, who was the Greek god of death, and Hades, the Greek god of the underworld, the other three riders must have had names too. So where did they come from in the ancient pantheons of the neighbors of ancient Israel? So that's a starting place. If they can understand that what they're seeing and reading in Percy Jackson and the Olympians, or some of those series, is actually real, those characters are in the Bible, and see how God and Jesus Christ deals with those entities, then you get them really excited about trying to find other things in there. Like, have them read Job 41 and see what they think about the description of Leviathan. If that isn't a dragon, I don't know what is.
Exactly. So, well, then you need to watch Derek's presentation from True Legends. You're going to get a whole lot more of that kind of talk. So sign up for that and go to gen6.com, GENSIX.com. We've talked about the writers already quite a bit. It's my belief that they started in the first century when Jesus arrived in heaven, that they have been writing since then, and they tend to ride together as a quartet or quintet, if you want to include Hades.
Yeah, and we think that, to use a sports metaphor, that the enemy always has a candidate lined up to serve the role as the human vessel for the Antichrist.
Yes, always.
The beast who emerges from the sea with the 7 heads and the 10 crowns, and the 8th head is one of the 7. That is an ancient spirit, and we'll talk about that when we get to further into Revelation 12 and 13. But there's going to be a human vessel for that, and at various points in history, it might have been Nimrod or Antiochus Epiphanes or the Pharaoh of the Exodus, or Adolf Hitler, or Napoleon. There's always somebody in the bullpen warming up for the enemy, because they don't know when they're going to need to make the call to the bullpen to bring in the closer, what they think will be their closer. That's the baseball, metaphor. So,
or are they wrong?
Yeah, because they don't know. They don't know exactly when God is going to fulfill prophecy, which is why we don't understand prophecy completely well. God hasn't tipped all of his plans to us because too many of us are still talking to the enemy. In fact, all of us are from time to time, whether we want to or not.
Whether
or
we
know
want
it
to or not,
Yeah.
we have them listening in on our conversations, and they interact with us in ways we may not expect.
That's true. So they've been riding since waiting for that opportunity to call in their closer, the Antichrist. And so that's why we believe those first seals with the first 4 riders have been opened, and we believe we are already past the opening of seal number 5. We'll talk about why here today. Or at least we're on the verge of the 5th seal.
I think we've been seeing the 5th seal opened all along, and we're going to explain that after we read it.
Okay. Revelation 6, beginning at verse 9, when he opened the 5th seal, he being Jesus, the Lamb, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the witness they had borne. They cried out with a loud voice, O sovereign Lord, holy and true, how long before you will judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? Then they were each given a white robe and told to rest a little longer until the number of their fellow servants and their brothers should be complete, who were to be killed as they themselves had been.
I believe this 5th seal was also opened, again, 1st century. And this was the beginning. Those riders were riding, and it wasn't just pestilence, it was war. It was a war against those who claimed Christ as their saviors.
Yep.
And we see those many, beginning with the apostles, the disciples, many of them were slain. And then on we had these martyrs to the faith who were slain by these fallen realm riders.
Yeah.
And we now see that their spirits, their souls are beneath God's altar. Remember that there are 2 aspects of that. One is that he's right there with them. He realized that they have been slain as sacrifices by the fallen realm. The fallen realm laugh whenever a Christian dies. But they went to be with him in the throne, but he inhabits our praise. And so those who died singing, those who died praising God, those who praised the Lord even though a friend, a loved one died in battle, in spiritual battle. God is right there in the midst of it.
Mm-hmm. This began in the first century. We saw the persecution of Christians, even in the book of Acts. We see this already beginning, and certainly continued in the latter part of the first century with the persecution of Diocletian. This increased again after the rise of Islam in the 7th century, when most of the Christian world became subject to the forces of Islam. Many nations that we believe today have always been Muslim, were in fact Christian for hundreds of years. Before Muhammad and after his death was really when his followers kind of poured out of Arabia and took over most of the Mediterranean world. The reason the Western world is called the West today is because the East was conquered by Islam. The West was all that was left of Christendom. So, by the 7th century, 8th century, the forces of Islam were fighting in France. They had conquered Spain, were fighting in France, and had they not been turned back by Charles Martel at the Battle of Tours, they might well have crossed the English Channel and gotten over into England before England was really unified as a country.
That would have changed the entire world.
Yes, God had different plans.
Praise God.
But there are places today, even today, in China, the Middle East, Iran, where our brothers and sisters are still being persecuted, and sometimes violently so. We see this now, especially in Nigeria, since 2015, when a Christian president, Goodluck Jonathan, was replaced by a Muslim president who's sort of letting the Fulani Muslim herdsmen have their own way with the Christian Nigerians in the south. So that is a really awful situation there. So yes, I agree with you. The fifth seal has been opened, and there have been martyrs for Christ for the last 2,000 years.
Throughout history, and these martyrs are asking him, how long? How long until you return? How long until the war is done? And you are going to avenge our blood?
And I think that the answer will finally come with the opening of that sixth seal.
I think so too. You want to read that for us?
Well, how about we take a break and we'll discuss the sixth seal and some of its connections in the Old Testament.
Yes. Again, you won't understand prophecy in the New Testament, especially the book of Revelation, until you understand the Old.
Yes. The sixth seal, next on Unraveling Revelation.
NASA, Donald Trump, and a cosmic cover-up of end times proportions. Skywatch TV is proud to announce the largest giveaway of the year, the Project Wormwood Grand Giveaway. When you order Dr. Thomas Horn's new book, The Wormwood Prophecy, from the Skywatch TV store, you'll also receive on DVD the entire 4-part Skywatch TV series on the Wormwood Prophecy, featuring Dr. Thomas Horn and Derek and Sharon Gilbert. But we're just getting started. You'll also receive the never-before-released Best of Defender Publishing ebook collection on data disc, featuring 70 of the most information-packed, best-selling books in Defender history. These full-length works are in popular ebook formats, so you can read them on EPUB, PDF, Kindle, and other handheld electronic devices. Valued at over $700 all by itself. Yours now for your donation of only $35 plus shipping and handling. This is the largest giveaway of the year and will be available only while supplies last, so don't delay. The Project Wormwood Grand Giveaway, available now at skywatchtvstore.com. Order now or call 1-844-750-4985.
Welcome back to Unraveling Revelation from Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and we want to remind you, first of all, Skywatch TV has a great app. It works on any of your mobile devices, and it's absolutely free. It gives you access not only to the programming, the videos, but also to all the news.
Yes, Tom Horn several times a week goes through and basically culls news that the mainstream media overlooks, and finds stories that, we make reading the news at Skywatch TV a regular routine at our house, because Tom is always fine. And you get it sent right to your smartphone or tablet, iOS, Android, even Amazon Kindle Fire tablets. The app works on all of those devices, and we have links to those app stores at skywatchtv.com. You'll find a link in the top menu bar. But yes, it is absolutely free and well worth having, because it brings all of our video programming right to your smartphone or tablet as well. It also has a calendar of upcoming events, including the newly rescheduled Skywatch TV, Tour of Israel, Skywatch TV, Tour of Israel 2021 now. Search for the travelers.
Yes, we have changed it from October of 2020 to April of 2021 because we don't want to run into the continued problem of travel restrictions. Israel is saying that they are not going to lift regular travel until possibly September. So we do not want to run into suddenly you can't fly from where you are living into Israel. We've also changed the extension. It's not Sardinia. Many of you asked, can we not go to Sardinia but go to Jordan again? Well, we are.
Yes.
We heard you.
And that fits the theme because the travelers, the valley of the travelers prophesied by Ezekiel, and we'll get to that more when we get to Revelation 19, is the plains of Moab, the valley and the Jordan River Valley just north of the Dead Sea, below Mount Nebo. And that is very, very important to end times prophecy and this long war against the demonic realm, the spirits of the Nephilim, being the demons. That's been ongoing that's been going on since Genesis 10. So. Yes, so more information on that at skywatchinisrael.com is the website, skywatchinisrael.com, and don't miss it because not only are our colleagues from Skywatch TV, Donna Howell and Allie Anderson Henson joining us, special guest Messianic Rabbi Zev Poret, who's got some amazing teachings, what he taught at Shechem and the actual locations of the resurrection, or rather the crucifixion and the burial tomb of Jesus, which are not on the tours. You just won't see on any other tour. So skywatchinisrael.com.
That is so true. We are now going to get to the next seal, and I've been reading a wonderful book that I highly recommend called Earthquake Resurrection.
Yes.
And I think you're going to find that this goes along with what we see in the seventh seal and then in the very opening portions of chapter 7, where you see people from every tongue, tribe, and nation standing before the throne.
Yes, and I'll put a link in the notes. Wherever you're watching this video, check the notes below because I'll put a link to the website where you can find out more about the book. David W. Lowe is the author. We interviewed him, more than 10 years ago about the book, and he made some really interesting and I think eye-opening connections between this and seismic activity, hence earthquake resurrection.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense.
So, Revelation 6, beginning at verse 12, and here's the connection to Revelation. When he opened the sixth seal, I looked, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth, the full moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to earth as the fig tree sheds its winter fruit when shaken by a gale. The sky vanished like a scroll that is being rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from its place. Then the kings of the earth and the great ones and the generals and the rich and the powerful and everyone, slave and free, hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains, calling to the mountains and rocks, "Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who is seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who can stand?"
Now, there are a number of aspects to this that can be taken a couple of different ways. One way is the typical interpretation. That is, when John is called up into heaven, that's the rapture. And that everything after that is after the rapture. In other words, we haven't experienced any of it yet. But if you take a look at history and you see the terrible things that have happened to believers, the things that have swept through the earth like earthquakes and volcanoes and plagues. I mean, when the Black Plague hit Europe, as many as 20 to 35% of the population, depending upon what you read, died. That's a lot of people.
And 100 years ago, the great influenza, the Spanish flu, killed, by some estimates, between 20 and 150 million people, which is an incredible number. And at the same time, World War I was killing tens of millions of people as well.
Exactly. And just looking at what you were discussing regarding Islam coming against the church and the persecution that took place, the violent deaths that took place, beheadings. We read about those later in prophecy. So that's one of the reasons that I tend to think that Jesus arrived in heaven. John was called up there so he could witness that event.
Right.
But yes, I think the way he was called up is very, very much like what we're going to see when the rapture does occur. But at this point, what might be going on that would cause this earthquake?
Well, we see a reference in Matthew 20, or Matthew 28. I'm going to have to look this up now. I think Matthew 28, verse 2, but let me confirm that, where Jesus is resurrected and there is a great earthquake that takes place. Yes, Matthew 28, verse 2, behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. This is when Mary Magdalene and Mary, his mother, went to see him at the tomb. David W. Lowe, in his book, connects that earthquake. Plus, if you go back to Matthew 27, there's mention of, at the same time, the tombs opening and the bodies of many of the saints being raised and coming back into Jerusalem and witnessed by many people.
Yes.
The power, the energy of this resurrection, David connects to the earthquake in Matthew 28, which, by the way, geologists have confirmed from soil samples, core samples taken at En Gedi, just west of the Dead Sea, proving that there was an earthquake that took place centered around the Dead Sea in the year 31 AD.
Oh my goodness, that's fascinating. Well, if it took place in the Dead Sea, then that earthquake that was caused by Christ's resurrection went a long way.
It did, because it's right on that Dead Sea transform,
Yes.
that rift, which is a key part of the presentation I'm doing for the True Legends Conference. So you've got that. So David argues then that the earthquake resurrection there is what is essentially the same principle behind the massive earthquake in Revelation 6, the earthquake here, which would be the resurrection that Paul writes about in 1 Corinthians 15, beginning at verse 35.
Yes, David, he looks at a lot of the history and the archaeology and the biblical verses that pertain to Christ's resurrection. And one thing he discusses is the possibility that the Shroud of Turin might be real. He
Yes.
doesn't say whether or not he is convinced of it, but he gives you some of the quotes from those who actually have studied it, the scientists who've looked at it. And there was one scientist who came to the conclusion that the only thing that could really explain it is if a controlled nuclear event took place inside that tomb. Imagine a controlled nuclear event that would ripple throughout the region. And David, and I think he's onto something, David believes that that is what caused this resurrection. Now picture every believer who is alive today and those believers who are buried waiting for their resurrection. They're already the souls beneath the altar. They're waiting for their resurrected body to come and meet them. Now picture all of that nuclear blast energy going throughout the whole earth.
An earthquake,
Whoa.
the likes of which have never been seen before. And by the way, we've interviewed some of the experts who've examined the shroud,
We have.
including Russ Brialt and Barry Schwartz, who was really an agnostic, raised as an Orthodox Jew, but an agnostic who has come to believe that the shroud is genuine through his examination. They said, look, I came into this as a skeptic and I can't explain anything. There's no other explanation for how this was created because all of the theories that have been put forward, oh, it was painted, it was, none of that makes any
that's been
sense.
disproven.
So you've got that. You've also got references now connecting this earthquake, as we see here, the day of his wrath is come and who is able to stand. This connects it to the day of the Lord, which is
Yes.
the day of God's judgment when
Exactly.
he pours out his wrath on the world.
So understand that those who believe that chapter 6 is an outline, I'm not discounting that. It's entirely possible you're right. I used to believe that. I was taught that when I was studying this book back in the day. Is it possible, however, that this is not an outline, but this is Christ unbreaking these seals, breaking these seals, to take ownership via this legal document. And as he's taking ownership, the fallen realm is angrier and angrier and angrier. They know he's eventually going to begin his retribution and his final 7-year, the final week of Daniel's prophecy of 70 weeks. We're not there yet. They are looking for that. And they realize when all of this energy goes throughout the earth and the dead in Christ are raised and those of us who remain are caught up with him in the clouds,
Yes.
they know their time is up.
Yeah. Yep. And
Last 7 years of history now begin.
Yes, and I think that was that's even referred to or hinted at by John in verse 12, where he says there are stars, or verse 13, stars fall unto earth as fig trees cast off their figs. Stars in the Bible often represent angels, the angelic realm.
Yes.
And again, we see references in the Old Testament, Isaiah 13, beginning at verse 9, behold, the day of the Lord comes. This is again the day of his wrath. Cruel with wrath and fierce anger, make the land a desolation and destroy its sinners from it. For the stars of the heavens and their constellations will not give their light. The sun will be dark at its rising, and the moon will not shed its light. And now I also want to touch on Joel 2 very quickly. Verse 10 in Joel 2, the earth quakes before them. This is talking about Joel's army.
Yes, David refers to that as well.
Yeah, the heavens tremble, the sun and the moon are darkened, and the stars withdraw their shining. And then when you go down to verse 30, he essentially repeats it. I will show wonders in the heavens and on the earth with blood and fire and columns of smoke. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. This is something to bear in mind whenever we see these mentions of the blood moons and whether or not these are the fulfillment of prophecy. If we're not seeing a great massive earthquake, the likes of which has never been seen before, in connection with the blood moon and the sun being turned to darkness at the same time, the blood moon isn't the opening of the sixth seal, okay? It is maybe a prophetic sign of some kind, but it's not connected to what's happening in Revelation 6.
Well, it's entirely possible because of what is happening in Revelation 6 that we have dust particles. I mean, the volcanoes may start going off.
Yeah.
A lot of things could happen that if you look at the ring of fire and you suddenly have a lot of energy go through that area, it could get very, very bad very, very quickly. Now, we know, and we're running out of time, we know that the humans who are in league with the fallen realm are trying to put together a one world government. They want a way to very quickly force mankind into accepting that. Most of us are not so happy about that. What if, when all of these things occur, then those who remain after the rapture does happen, the earth is in tatters. What else can they do except come around and a strong man, strides upon the stage and says, I know how to fix this. We'll do the following and I will take charge.
And to that end, we need to know where everybody is all the time, whether you have your shots, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What we're seeing now with COVID-19 is just a type and shadow of what is to come. People are afraid. They're willing to give up their freedom for security. Imagine the state of the world, as Sharon said, after the church is suddenly removed. Families torn apart, institutions decimated, and somebody comes along and says, be not afraid.
Yeah.
Trust in me. I will fix it all.
Be not afraid. I am your Messiah. I've returned.
Yeah, that is what's ahead for this world. Next week, we talk about the 144,000 who are sealed as we pick up with the sixth seal and move on to number 7. And thank you for watching. This is Unraveling Revelation from Skywatch TV.